Okay, hello everyone. So why do emotional people do stupid things? For our discussion here, we'll be talking about three parts of the brain: the neocortex, the limbic system, which we'll be most interested in, and the hypothalamus. The oldest part of the brain is the limbic system. So the limbic system is responsible for governing emotions, motivation, and feelings. So all animals with a brain would have something similar to a limbic system, as in they work sort of the same way, but it is especially well developed in mammals, and that's why mammals are special in the way that they are able to care for their young. So if you look at stuff like crocodiles, so crocodiles do not have a limbic system that is as complex as us, so they aren't able to really feel some emotions that we feel. Like for example, when a crocodile lays eggs, they would care for their eggs, but the moment the eggs hatch, they don't care about their child because they simply don't have the hardware to allow them to feel for their kids in some sense. So the second part of the brain we'll be discussing is the neocortex, the new cortex. Now the neocortex is something that makes us uniquely human. Not that we are the only ones that have it, but it is the most developed in humans. So other animals would have it, but it's not as large as ours. And that's why we are known as the Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens meaning wise man for Latin, or thinking man, okay? So sapiens meaning thinking or wise. Both these parts of the brain, the limbic system and the neocortex, are trying to gain the attention of the third part of the brain, which is the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is the part of the brain that holds the key to controlling the body, because it is the one that can communicate with the body by releasing certain hormones like dopamine to get you excited when you see chicken or whatever that you like to eat, or makes you feel scared or stressed by releasing cortisol when you see a bear running towards you. Now, based on inputs from either the neocortex or the limbic system, your hypothalamus is going to exert a certain effect on your body to give you the feelings which drives you to do certain things. So by now, I hope you understand that emotions are simply a driver for growth. In fact, the word emotion is, I think it's Latin or Greek for moter, right? Which means moto, which means movement. So emotions literally mean movement. So obviously, emotions are a very effective driver for movement, considering that almost, as I said, every animal with a brain would have a limbic system or something that functions somewhat similar to a limbic system. So for example, birds have a much simpler limbic system. It's called the pallium. And yeah, so how important are emotions for us humans? Now, if you look at us as a species, Homo sapiens have been around for about 300,000 years. And back when we were in the jungle, we were complete losers, right? We didn't really have any advantage besides our brain. Other animals have sharp teeth and claws. What do we have? We have fingernails. For us and many other prey to be able to really survive in the wild, you had to be fast. You had to be able to avoid dangers fast. Right? So that means you had to have a limbic system that is fast, that is able to control the whole brain in times of great danger, so you can run away. And when you look at the wiring of the brain, it does show. So when you see something, light enters your eyes, right? And the neural signal goes to the thalamus first. So the thalamus is like a post office of the brain. It decides where signals should go, right? So when you see something, visual information goes to your thalamus. Then your thalamus decides, oh, I need to send this to the visual cortex, which is responsible for making sense of what I'm seeing. And once the visual cortex makes sense and identifies what you're looking at, it sends it to the limbic system to make you decide, oh, what am I going to do? So your limbic system is going to decide what is it going to do. This process takes 30 milliseconds. Now the thing is, when the visual signal is in the thalamus, not all of it goes to the visual cortex. Some of it, a small portion of it, goes straight to the limbic system. So even before your visual cortex makes sense of what you're looking at, your limbic system gets a portion of that signal and it doesn't even know what the hell it is. It gets a portion of that signal and it decides what to do. And this process, this shortcut, also known as the quick and dirty path, takes only 13 milliseconds. So what does this mean for you? Even before you recognize what you're looking at, your brain already has an emotional response ready for it. And you might even realize this before, reacting before you recognize what's happening. So for example, if you're getting pranked, a friend drops a string on your leg and out of nowhere you just look down, oh my god, there's a string. You will know that's a string, right? So you might think, oh, that's a snake. So the first response, you might kick your leg reflexively, very quickly just kick it away, because that's your limbic system getting that small portion of the visual signal. So it doesn't even recognize that's a string, but you're gonna kick the string away thinking it's a snake because it's long, and your limbic system would think that it's a snake, it's a danger, I gotta kick it away. And only after a while, then your visual cortex identifies the item and says that it's a string and sends it to the amygdala, which makes you then feel stupid. Why did I kick the string away? Right? So now in modern days, this might look a bit stupid. Okay, you might get laughed at by your friends for a couple minutes. But the question is, what if the string is a snake? What if it's not a string? Right? Best case is just a string, you get pranked on, you look stupid for a couple minutes. Worst case, it's really a freaking snake and you gotta kick it away, and that saves your life. You can figure that this has probably saved enough of our ancestors such that this reflex is still with us today. Believe it or not, when you are really stressed or really emotional, it's kind of the same thing playing out but in slow motion. When you are in a very stressful situation, you can probably imagine that there would be a lot of cortisol floating around in your head, right? Cortisol is the stress hormone. And cortisol gets a lot of shit in the media today. Like, a lot of people blame it for a bunch of health reasons. And that is real, but your body doesn't have cortisol for no reason, just to give you problems, right? Cortisol has a job. And cortisol's job is to get your neurons in your brain excited, right? So cortisol wants to make sure that your brain is alert and stimulated. For example, if you're in a very stressful situation, a lion's running towards you, you would generally prefer a brain that is awake and ready to run rather than a half-baked brain, right? But the problem is when you are super stressed in a modern day situation, for example, you just got a breakup, it's not really a lion that's running towards you, right? So the breakup makes you very stressed, and then there's a lot of cortisol floating around in your brain. The problem is that cortisol causes your brain to fire like crazy in a sense, right? And it overstimulates the neocortex. So the neocortex, remember, is responsible for rational thinking. And when your neocortex is not really synchronized in terms of firing thanks to cortisol, you can't think straight. So in some sense, your limbic system, which has told your hypothalamus that, oh my god, we are in great danger, and then your hypothalamus is releasing cortisol like crazy, this cortisol is inhibiting the function of your neocortex. So in some senses, your limbic system is hijacking your neocortex. And your neocortex, especially the frontal lobe, is responsible for certain things like working memory, short-term memory. So if I were to ask you right away, 75 plus 65 is how much? You would be able to tell me 140, because I hope you're not exactly stressed right now. If you were really stressed, you would probably have forgotten, oh, what's the number that came before it? 75, right? So when you're really stressed, you realize that you can't remember stuff as well because your neocortex is also responsible for short-term working memory, your prefrontal cortex. Especially if you're a student, and then there are some cases where students, it gets so stressed when you go to the exam hall and you see the paper and you just go blank, right? So that is what happens when your frontal lobe, when your neocortex, especially the frontal lobe, is overstimulated by cortisol. So back to the question, why do people do stupid things when they get emotional? The reason why is very simple. Your brain is outdated. Our brains are outdated. When we get stressed from a breakup or a failure of test, our limbic system thinks we're dying. right? And then, you know, we wind up doing stupid shit. And only after the neocortex comes back online, we start cringing at how stupid we were, what stupid things did we do, and all that, yeah. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video.